Brings us to live events, ticketing, resale and pricing consultation. Sir Chris Bryant.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to make a statement about ticketing in the live events sector. In the words of the musical Hamilton, there is nothing quite like being in the room where it happens. I would hazard a guess that every single one of us here today can remember the first time we went to a live event. My first rugby international was Wales versus Scotland at Murrayfield, aged 12. The food was terrible. My first live gig was U2's The Joshua Tree at Wembley Arena. These moments of shared passion are part of what makes us the people that we really are. As Gloria Gaynor said, there's nothing to compare with live music. There just isn't anything. No wonder live events are so highly prized. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, for far too long, ticket touts have leached off fans' passion. In the past, it was spivs in long raincoats at the gates. Nowadays, it's a trade made all the more pernicious by the internet, which enables modern-day touts hiding behind multiple false identities to hoover up tickets and sell them at vastly inflated prices. It's indefensible. It trades off other people's hopes, and it doesn't return a single penny to the artists, the performers, the venue, the industry or the sport. We said we would tackle this, and that's precisely what we're doing. On Friday, the Department for Business and Trade and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport published a consultation on the resale of live events tickets and a separate call for evidence on pricing practices in the live events sector. It's not a consultation on whether to act, it's a consultation on precisely how we should act. The UK, let's face it, has a world-leading live events sector. Our artists, festivals and venues bring joy to audiences across the country. Last year, the sector employed over 200,000 people, contributing to local economies up and down the country, from stage technicians and sound engineers to venue staff and promoters. Every event, whether it's at a major stadium event or an intimate gig at a grassroots venue, injects life into local communities and economies, supporting small businesses and generating significant revenue for our towns and cities. It is musicians, performers and athletes who make these events what they are and create the value that sits behind them, not the ticket touts. Live events are a catalyst for creativity too, where artists have a platform to hone their craft and relate directly to audiences as well as earn a living. Live performances create unforgettable shared experiences that transcend cultural and social boundaries, uniting communities up and down the country and shaping our national identity. However, too many fans are missing out on opportunities to experience these live events. Put simply, the ticketing market is not working for fans. The government recognises that a well-functioning ticket resale market can play an important role. For instance, allowing those who cannot attend an event to give someone else the opportunity to go in their place. But far too often, tickets are listed on the resale market at extortionate prices, many multiples of the face value. Just one example, standing tickets for Charlie XCX's current UK tour were originally priced at £54, but they've been listed on ticket resale sites for as much as £400. That's enough, as she herself would put it, to shock you like defibrillators. This so-called scalping is the work of organised touts who are systematically buying up tickets in bulk on the primary market, then reselling them to fans at hugely inflated prices. This government is committed to putting fans back at the heart of live events and to clamping down on unfair, exploitative practices. In doing so, we want fairness for fans and an economically successful live event sector. We made a manifesto commitment to act on this, and that is precisely what we will do. That is why we have launched a consultation as the first major step towards delivering on this ambition. We want to take action in an effective, proportionate and responsible way, ensuring any new protections work for fans and for the live event sector. The consultation outlines a range of options to address ongoing problems. We are revisiting recommendations from the Competition and Market Authority's 2021 report on secondary ticketing that were not taken forward by the previous government. This includes a licensing regime for resale platforms, new limits on the number of tickets individual resellers can list, and new requirements on platforms to ensure the accuracy of information about tickets listed for sale on their websites. We are also keen to tackle scalping, that is to say, for-profit resales of tickets above their face value. That is why we are considering a statutory price cap on ticket resales, as seen in many other countries. Its purpose would be to break the business model of organised touts by prohibiting resale at vastly inflated prices. In the consultation, we ask how a price cap should be designed and implemented so as to deliver a genuine sea change in the ticketing landscape to the benefit of fans and the live event sector, and whether it should be at face value only or plus 10, 20 or 30%. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is one other aspect which we might call the oasis moment on which we are seeking evidence. The live event sector has adopted new approaches to selling tickets in recent years, including the use of new pricing strategies and technologies such as dynamic pricing. I want to be absolutely clear, not all dynamic pricing is harmful. Fans often take advantage of early bird tickets and last-minute price reductions. That is absolutely fine, and we have no intention to stop it. The key thing is that fans are treated fairly and openly, with timely, transparent and accurate information being presented ahead of sales. So as to better understand these changes and challenges faced by fans, we are publishing a call for evidence on pricing practices in the live events sector. The consultation and call for evidence will be open for 12 weeks. We strongly encourage all interested stakeholders, including fans, artists and performers, ticketing platforms and the wider live event sector, to respond. Once the consultation is complete, we will decide on next steps, but be in no doubt we intend to act. We have a world-class live events sector in the UK, but, Madam Deputy Speaker, we don't have a secondary ticket market to match. In the words of T-Rex, it's a rip-off, such a rip-off. To the fans, the performers and the touts, let me be crystal clear, we will clamp down on unfair practices in the secondary market. The question is not whether, but how we improve protection for fans. I commend this statement to the House.
Minister Saqib Bhatti.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for advance sight of his statement. Madam Deputy Speaker, as the honourable gentleman said, dynamic pricing is a strategy used across many industries outside the creative sectors, including hotels, taxis and airlines. It can offer significant benefits to consumers when prices are lowered, for example, through early bird tickets or late ticketing. The government is right to emphasise the importance of transparency. But Oasis fans, and I'm one of them, we know that we didn't have the necessary information up front. So I understand that the Competition and Markets Authority is rightly investigating this episode. However, in my view, new regulations should only be considered when they are necessary, proportionate and do not duplicate existing rules. Current legislation already states that while dynamic pricing is legal, it must be implemented transparently. So I can assure the Minister that we will consider carefully any proposals that could strengthen, improve or simplify the market for fans. But I also warn him we will oppose regulation when it is just introduced for the sake of being new regulation. The secondary ticket resale market plays an important role for artists, fans and venues. It can provide a safer way to transfer unwanted tickets, ensuring that seats are not left empty at venues. The Minister claims in his consultation that his reforms will better protect fans, improve access to live events and support the creative sectors. He claims that these proposals will give power back to fans and prevent them from being fleeced by ticket touts. However, we know that this isn't true. We know that Labour's plans will harm artists, they will harm fans and they will harm venues and make those live events even harder to attend. First, let's discuss, he wants to know, I'll tell him. First, let's discuss price caps on resale tickets. The government's consultation proposes capping ticket resale prices to somewhere between the original price and a 30% uplift. On the surface, this might seem like a reasonable measure, but we know that this will lead to an upsurge in black market activity and more money flowing into the pockets of ticket touts. In fact, price controls would lead to a surge in unregulated, illegal transactions, leaving fans with little to no consumer protections. He might not believe me as a free marketeer, but the Computer and Communications Industry Association, who in response to the government's consultation warned that draconian regulation targeting only the secondary market will only mean more tickets changing hands in informal settings without the same protections that exist in proper marketplaces. So I regret to say that the government's proposed measures to increase regulation of resale websites and apps and to raise fines for rules violations will not prevent fans from turning to underground markets. We've already seen this in Victoria, Australia, where a 10% profit cap failed to prevent significant markup on ticket prices and even led to a spike in ticket scams. And now we know that scams are already a serious issue in the secondary ticket market. For example, the Minister will be aware that, according to Lloyds Bank, Taylor Swift fans lost an estimated £1 million in ticket scams ahead of her tour. So I asked the Minister, if his policy recommendation would be in place, how much more would be lost by fans to scammers? We also know that a ticket resale cap will lead to empty seats and the prevention of spontaneous ticket purchases. We saw this at the Paris Olympics, where restrictions on the resale of tickets left empty seats at many venues. And empty seats aren't just bad for artists, they're also bad for the economy. Events at stadiums and venues provide a boost for local businesses, including restaurants, bars and other hospitality venues. And let's be clear, the hospitality industry is already under a lot of strain, not least because of the budget of broken promises, their national insurance job tax and the slashing of rates, which the Music Venue Trust has already warned that will place an immediate risk of closure on many, many businesses, representing the potential loss of more than 12,000 jobs, £250 million in market activity and the loss of over 75,000 live music events. And let's be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, the reason we're here today is because the spin doctors at Number 10 were trying to move the news cycle away from a beleaguered Prime Minister, a Chancellor already drowning in the debt markets, and an anti-corruption Minister being investigated for corruption. All the while this department and this government throw the creative industries and hospitality businesses under the bus.
Minister.
Lordy, lordy, lordy. I mean, he says he's an Oasis fan. But to be honest, the way he talks about the last Tory government, I think he must have been a Nirvana fan. Because everything was absolutely perfect, wasn't it, when he was a minister? Look, let me first of all just put something right. He seems to think that our call for evidence on dynamic pricing is about all sorts of different industries. This is only about the live event sector. We're not talking about the tourism industry. We're not talking about hotels and how they fill, or taxis or anything like that. We're solely talking about the live event sector. We recognise that that wasn't part of our manifesto commitment, so we do want to hear what people's evidence is and whether there are further measures that we need to take. But I think the one thing that I could say confidently is that it does seem horribly unfair when you're logged in, you're in the system, and you see the price of the ticket going up 120, 125, 130, 135, because that creates a sort of sense of panic in you that you've got to buy. And it's perfectly legitimate to consider whether that's a good way of selling tickets and whether it's fair to consumers. So that's a legitimate question to ask. I can't comment on the Oasis situation. He knows perfectly well that there's an investigation by the CMA. Let me just, however, correct the other point. He kept on saying, we know that this, that and the other will happen. Well, we don't, for a start. But more importantly, let me just explain to him what we're really trying to tackle. It's this thing where Becky, who lives, I don't know, flat 23, number 75, the High Street, is desperate to get 2 tickets for her mum's favourite band for her mum's birthday coming up later that year. She's absolutely desperate, so she logs on at 9 o'clock, she's logging on, she can see the tickets selling and her not managing to get into the system. She's desperate about it, and then 20 past 9, all the tickets are gone, and then lo and behold, 21 minutes past 9, you can get them on the secondary ticket market for vastly inflated prices. That's what we're trying to tackle. It's a very simple problem, and there are loads of countries in the world. He just referred to one country, but France, Italy, Ireland, Poland, Portugal, Norway, Japan, Belgium, most of Canada, most of Australia, Israel, and several states in the United States all have simple measures in place. We want to make sure that we tackle that very simple problem, because in the end, I just think that the value is created by the artists themselves and by the passion of the fans. It shouldn't then go into pockets that in the main are not based in this country and certainly haven't contributed anything to the creation of the value in the first place.
Sharon Hodgson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Having campaigned on this issue for over 15 years, I have reached 3 main conclusions. Firstly, the cap on resale should be set as low as possible. For example, face value plus 5% or 10% to take the incentive out of scalping, or simply follow the Irish model and prohibit resale for profit altogether. Secondly, many of these touts and resale sites are based overseas. Therefore, this legislation must be supranational. Finally, any crackdown on this black market must be fully enforced, unlike the current situation, where prosecutions are few and far between, there's been a handful, 6 at most. Does the Minister agree?
Yeah. I agree that she's campaigned for 15 years, because I think I've heard nearly every speech that she's made on the subject, and she's been absolutely magnificent. I pay tribute to her over the years. I think there are many artists in this country who would be grateful for the work that she's done on this, because so often they're caught in a completely invidious situation. They see tickets going for absolutely preposterous prices. I looked earlier at StubHub. They're selling Dua Lipa tickets for Wembley on the 20th of June, face value £81.45 for £2,417. And if you want to go see Jimmy Carr, this is Viagogo, if you want to see Jimmy Carr at Milton Keynes in 2 days' time, face value ticket £60, on Viagogo £202. That's the kind of problem that we've got to deal with. She's absolutely right about supranational issues. This doesn't just apply in the UK. It's difficult for us to prevent them selling tickets for Olivia Rodrigo concerts in Mexico, but we can make sure that for Olivia Rodrigo concerts in the UK that this does apply. And she's absolutely right about the point about enforcement. That's why we're looking at whether there should be a licensing regime, and if so, precisely how that should work. But she makes the point, she's made the point in many speeches before, I'll reiterate for her, which is that we have hardly seen any prosecutions whatsoever under the complex set of rules that there are at the moment, and that's one of the things that we've got to fix.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Ian Sollom.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I add my thanks to the Minister for advance sight of this statement. It's good to have the government's next step to try and support fans and performers and others in working in the live events industry laid out in today's announcement. We know the huge value of live events in this country, great contribution to our economic as well as our cultural well-being, and it's right that the government is taking action on this issue. Too many fans across the country have fallen prey to sharp practices and touts ripping them off, and the Liberal Democrats are supportive of taking action. Now, we've long called for the implementation of the Competition and Market Authority's recommendations to crack down on ticket resale, and those recommendations should be leading the government forward on this issue. Measures such as capping ticket resales are important, but possibly the Minister can provide a bit greater clarity on the government's intentions in that regard. Can he suggest what cap on ticket resales the government would favour at the moment? And what new powers of enforcement they will give to trading standards and the CMA? But beyond those measures, will they consider being more ambitious, for example, giving consumers more control by requiring ticket companies to provide information, accurate information on price increases? Or answer Liberal Democrat calls to review the use of transaction fees? Now, I want to be clear, we welcome the government looking at the queuing systems used by ticket sellers, both in the primary and resale markets, and considering measures that could address that current situation that he has described, that too often feels unfair and arbitrary to those fans on the end of it. Hearing the voices of fans in this discussion is undoubtedly important, so we really do welcome the consultation. But fans also want to know that the government will get on and act to solve these problems. So, to conclude, can I ask the Minister to inform the House as to when fans will actually start to see some changes implemented? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I welcome him to his post and welcome the Lib Dems' support for what we're proposing. Just a couple of things. He referred to accurate information. You could certainly argue that that is already legislated for, but not very well enforced. And indeed, when I was looking at some of these sites earlier on today, it's quite interesting that sometimes the face value is findable, but not at the same time as the price that you're going to pay. And you would have thought that it should be mandatory that you should be able to see both of those things at the same time if you're going to be ripped off. Though I personally don't subscribe to this line that if somebody's prepared to pay £2,417 for a Dua Lipa ticket, then so be it. I don't believe in that. That, it seems to me, is effectively the line from Eurythmics. Some of them want to be abused. and I don't think we should adopt that policy at all. Also, on transaction fees, the point he made, I think I'm right in saying that the Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Act 2024, section 230, would already apply to what he's arguing for. But if I've got that wrong, I will send him a note. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I note that I think at one point you said that your favourite song, it may have been at a particular event, was Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. Now, I'm not sure, because she performed at the Royal Albert Hall last year. I'm not sure whether you were there.
I'd like to commend the Minister for his astonishing memory. Dr Rupert Huck.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is hugely welcomed by me after the disappointment of my private member's bill on this falling off, and by my constituent Alison Martin, who is mum of Coldplay's Chris, and she fed into mine. So can my friend assure me that he will resist that sort of over-regulation of our lives, market forces argument we hear time after time from people opposite? We just heard it again. When I was trying to get sign-ups for my bill, a lot of Conservatives didn't want to know, because this is a consumer protection measure. It's a cap for all of our constituents to stop those bots hoovering up and hiking up the prices of these things. And also, can he reiterate that we're not against all dynamic pricing, because the price of tickets can go down as well as up, and we don't mind that.
Can I commend her for a private member's bill? I think I told her that we were going to be acting fairly soon, and so her private member's bill might not be necessary. She didn't believe me, and she ploughed on. But we are intent upon acting. She's quite right about dynamic pricing. I mean, I've been involved in a small arts festival in my own constituency in Treorchy, and we offer early bird tickets. That's a form of dynamic pricing, which I think works for everybody, and we certainly don't want to prohibit that. She's quite right. Much as I like my opposite number, the Minister, I find it quite easy to resist him. I just keep on thinking of those lines from Pink when I think of the previous government. What about all those plans that ended in disaster?
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Caroline Dinage.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I welcome this. I welcome the government putting music fans at the forefront of these consultations, although the Minister will know that I would like him to go further and have a full fan-led review of music. But meanwhile, looking at the details of these consultations, it's telling to me that while Ticketmaster welcomed the resale consultations, they're quite silent on the dynamic pricing issue. And Oasis, he'll recall, told their fans that dynamic pricing was a tool to combat ticket touting. So does the Minister agree that if the government acts decisively to stop this large-scale touting, inflating ticket prices, there will be less need for promoters like Live Nation to have to use dynamic pricing?
Well, she makes a very good point, and it's a delight to be able to agree with her on something in this area at the moment, because I think we might yet have a little bit of a disagreement over copyright and artificial intelligence, but I think that's only because she's misunderstood what we're trying to do. But I hope to be able to sit down with her and talk it all through. No, she makes a very good point. Look, that's why we want to make sure that we get the legislation right, and that's why we're doing a consultation rather than just storming ahead with a piece of legislation. As my honourable friend from Washington said earlier, that there's no point in doing any of these measures unless you're going to have a proper system of enforcement either.
Clive Efford.
Deputy Speaker, I'd just like to pay tribute to my honourable friend from Washington and Gateshead South for the doughty way that she has fought this corner for many years. I remember when I was Shadow Sports Minister, and this was my area, that even back then she was campaigning hard on this. I mean, this is very much legislation in favour of the fans. And we have to remember that in many cases the artists themselves realise that their own fans are being priced out of being able to go to their concerts by the practices of these online ticket touts. And so if we want to get true fans, and make the tickets affordable so that these people can attend and see their favourite bands and artists, then this legislation is well overdue. And I just urge my honourable friend to move ahead swiftly and bring in this long overdue legislation.
I'm very grateful, and I commend him too, because I know this is something that he's been working on for quite a long time. And when he was Shadow Sports Minister, it was one of the things that he was keen for us to progress. I should say I'm joined by my honourable member, the Sports Minister. And of course, one of the ironies is that in some sports we already implement something remarkably similar, if not tougher. So it's perfectly legitimate, I think, for us to be moving in a direction that puts these things on an equal footing. I take the point he makes about speed, and I recognise that I didn't respond to the honourable member who spoke for the Lib Dems when he asked when are we going to get action. I very much hope that if we get a very clear answer from the consultation, we'll be able to come forward with plans as a matter of urgency, and there must be a King's speech coming along sometime soon.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Continuing the Cyndi Lauper theme, I'm sure the Minister would agree that we've got to see these touts in their true colours. And the fact is that they will try to find ways round these eminently praiseworthy proposals. So let's imagine that he gets his cap in. What is to stop a undercover operation going ahead with a large number of individuals trying to make a small number of sales each on a website like eBay? How would he be able to enforce the cap in a situation like that?
Well, it's not just about the cap. We're consulting on several elements. So one of the other elements is about how many tickets an individual seller should be able to purchase. Now you could argue, the Shadow Minister could have argued that some of this is already met by the legislation, but I would argue that it's not clear enough, and that's one of the things that we do need to tackle. And in fact, if you look at all the different bits of legislation that we've accumulated over the years, many of them, every time there's a bill that my honourable friend from Washington has been able to table an amendment to, with support from some magnificent people in the House of Lords, it has been possible to get things through. That's why we may need to do quite a bit of rationalisation of the legislation in this field. But he makes a good point about we will always have to keep ahead of the game.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm delighted by the statement that the Minister has given today. This consultation will be welcomed by the entire cooperative movement who've been campaigning to keep fans at the heart of music. Access to culture is such an important part of our country, and our movement stands for the party of the consumer. Does the Minister agree that the actions like the one in taking this consultation forward is the best way to extend access to culture for real fans?
Yes, I do. And there's another point where we want to make real progress, incidentally, which is that you've got to have, not only have you got to have massive gigs, which everybody loves going to, and where you can celebrate along with thousands and thousands. You also want very intimate ones, and one of the most special moments is when you've seen a band perform first in a tiny venue of just 100 or 150 people, and then you see them in a massive venue or performing at Glastonbury or whatever it might be. So we need to look at the whole of the music system in the UK. That means a creative education for every single child. Wouldn't it be good if every child had an opportunity to go to live music at least once a year, as well as an opportunity to learn a musical instrument or learn how to sing? These are all the parts of a whole music approach that I think we need in this country.
Pete Wishart.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I warmly congratulate the Government for bringing forward these measures, which I wholeheartedly support, and I'm very surprised at the front bench, the Conservatives, who I think have got caught up in some garbled, ill-informed nonsense, but I really hope in time they come on board with these proposals, because they are important, because music, for too long, music fans have been ripped off and abused by the touts and the scalpers who have been nothing other than parasites on our live music sector. So I wholeheartedly welcome these proposals, and I pay tributes to the Honourable Member for Washington and Gateshead South, and also the Fanfare Alliance, who've been campaigning on this for such a long time, and campaigning newspapers like the Daily Record, who regularly feature large articles on this issue. But where we have this in place now, I'd like to hear more about the proposals for the dynamic pricing. This has been the issue I think has perplexed music fans more than anything over the summer. We now have some sort of route way towards resolving ticket touting. I think we need to hear more about what he's going to do exactly about dynamic pricing, because that's something that needs fixed.
Well, it's always a delight to be able to please the honourable gentleman, because this is not an event that happens from this side of the House very often, I think he would confess. And I'm not sure any tickets are available for his music gigs, or whether they're selling at multiple prices. But he has been a doughty campaigner for the creative industries over the years, and I welcome that. Look, we were very clear in the general election what we were going to do in relation to the primary issue here. We hadn't made any commitments around dynamic pricing, and that's why we're offering a much more tentative approach in relation to that. And because we know that there are forms of dynamic pricing that work extremely well. You know, when you go and buy a last-minute theatre ticket, that is a form of dynamic pricing, because you want to get the theatre full at the end of the day. So we want to tread a bit more carefully there. That's why it's a call for evidence rather than us presenting our proposals at this stage. If he's got good ideas on what we should do, then my door is open. Do come and talk to us.
Annalise Midgley.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I am made up at this statement made today, especially as someone with a music industry background and also as a big fan. Dynamic pricing made headlines last summer with Oasis when their fans were hit by prices that were 2, 3 or even 4 times the face value after they queued for hours and hours, and they got to pay and had a matter of minutes to decide whether they wanted those tickets. John Robb, the music writer, said, "Dynamic pricing exploits people's excitement in the worst possible way." And this was after Ticketmaster behaved no better than the touts that they claimed to protect fans from. So I welcome this call for evidence into this practice. But can the Minister assure me that this leads to real action so that fans are no longer ripped off by surge pricing?
I think just about the first thing my honourable friend said to me when she collared me in a lobby after we'd won the general election is, "You are going to do something about ticket touts, aren't you?" So I'm glad I'm able to please her this afternoon. Look, I mean, one of the worst things that can happen, and I'm sure every member of Oasis would say this, if you've gone through the process of buying tickets, you don't want everybody then to be saying, you don't look back in anger. Sorry, I had to work really hard to fit that in, didn't I? But it's a true point. You want the process of buying a ticket to be fair, open, transparent, and for the person buying the ticket to feel that they've got a sane and sensible deal rather than that they've been ripped off. And the problem with the present situation is that all too often people feel that they've just been ripped off, and that undermines the whole joy and passion of the event.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Every time the government proposes something in the interests of the consumer and the public, I'm so excited, and I welcome the statement from the Minister. Does he agree with me that as well as dynamic ticket pricing, where the price of the ticket itself fluctuates in always the wrong direction, there are high and disproportionate service fees, which have also now can become higher during peak times? Does he agree that there is a clear need for transparent pricing for consumers where they see a breakdown before they press buy?
100% I agree with him about this fees issue. There's an argument that you could say that it's already met by Section 230 of the bill that we passed last year, or the Act that we passed last year. But that's why we are consulting on that specific issue. And I would just say to the ticket touts who've complained about this, in the words of the musical Chicago, they had it coming. They only had themselves to blame.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for a very positive statement. There's nobody in the Chamber, I believe, would be all but encouraged by what has happened. The Minister is surely familiar with the Oasis lyrics. I promise not to sing them, and it goes along this line. And so Sally can wait. She knows it's too late as she's walking on by. Unfortunately for many fans, waiting wasn't an option, and they were left with the painful reality that dynamic pricing made their wallets melt away. Given reports that fans were subjected to inflated prices through in-demand dynamic pricing, with tickets jumping from less than 150 up to some 350 in moments, how will the Minister ensure that ticket sellers and event organisers in particular comply with the proposed consumer protection laws, especially those requiring transparency in pricing? Thank you so much.
Well, look, I mean, I'm grateful for his comments and for his musical rendition, which he didn't put into song. And I'm grateful for that probably as well. I don't know, maybe he has a beautiful high tenor voice, I don't know. But one of my anxieties about this whole situation is that one of the reasons that there haven't been very many prosecutions, maybe because the law has been too complicated, but it may also be because trading standards have really struggled in recent years because they are subject to budget cuts through local authorities. That's why, this for me is part of the whole of what government is trying to do, to try to put our public services back on a much more solid and secure footing and bring in legislation that stands up for consumers. But I'm grateful, and if he's got any particular ideas on how we could specifically ensure that there is proper enforcement, not least in Northern Ireland, then I'd be really grateful to hear them.
That concludes the statement, and we now come on to